So you watched Kuki's basics guide and now you're wondering about a couple of different teams for her. Well, that's what we're going to look at in this video is 3 different ways to kind of use Kuki Shinobu in a team. Yes, Alhaitham is in all 3 teams as well. You don't have to have Alhaitham. You could use like Razor, you could use Sino, you could use a couple of other characters. My Alhaitham is just really well built, so I like using him. Now we're gonna start off with my favorite team, which is Chiori, Alhaitham, Kuki Shinobu, and Furina. If you're wondering why Chiori is there, I do have another video that talks about that, so go check it out here. I hope I remember to put that there. If not, just scroll back. There's a thumbnail of Chiori and Alhaitham together and why they work in this team. But that's not what we're talking about in this video. We're going to talk about Kuki Shinobu. And Kuki Shinobu does a couple of things in this video. In all of these videos, it is going to be Quicken or Quick Bloom aggravate teams with Alhaitham. And in 2 of them, Kuki is going to be a Hyper Bloom trigger, and 1 of them, she is going to be pure healer support. Now, we are going to have 3 different builds for Kuki. And to start off, we're going to talk about the one in this team. Now, I only recommend building Kuki this way that I have her built here if you're using her in this particular team or in a team similar to this. That is because she is fulfilling multiple roles in this team, not just a single one. Now, she is level 90 out of 90. Of course, she does have 783 EM in this team. She is running a level 90 R5 Iron Sting, and she is running 4-piece Deep Woods. Yes, one of them is a 4-star, so if I can just get a 5-star, then her elemental mastery will go up even higher. I believe it will break 800, which is great. And she is C6, so she does get an extra 150 EM if she survives a fatal blow for 15 seconds, right? So she has plenty of ways to increase her EM from here. Now, the reason that she has 4-piece Deep Woods on her and not something else with more EM is because she can't use the 2-piece, but she can definitely use the 4-piece. The 4-piece, after elemental skill or burst hits an opponent, their Dendro resistance drops, even if this character is not on the field. This does not say it has to be a Dendro character, it is any character that uses their skill or burst that hits the opponent. So, when Kuki's skill pulses out and hits the opponent, they are immediately weaker to Dendro damage, which is Hyper Bloom damage, and my main source of damage in this team being Alhaitham on the field. So this is really, really good. It also is going to make the enemies be affected with Quicken, so that way Alhaitham can get spread damage in between Furina's minions hitting the enemy, causing blooms, and then Kuki Shinobu's skill triggering the Hyper Blooms. So she is making enemies weaker to Dendro because of her 4-piece set. She is putting Quicken on the enemy with Alhaitham to then allow Alhaitham to get spread, equaling more damage for Alhaitham. She is also triggering Hyper Blooms, doing more Dendro damage for the team. Now, the 4th thing that she is doing in this team is that she is healing. Is she healing a lot? No. But she's healing enough because Alhaitham has 4-piece Marshmallow Hunter set on him. So Furina's minions are dropping his HP. Kuki's skill is increasing his HP, so we have a permanent moving of his HP to have a permanent proc of the 4-piece Marshmallow Hunter. And with that permanent proc, Alhaitham is 82.6 over 264.9 on the crit split, which is phenomenal. So that's why in this particular team, Raiden would not be as good of a Hyper Bloom trigger as Kuki. We need that HP fluctuation so that way Alhaitham is constantly getting that extra crit rate. Now, yes, this is a very, very niche team. In most cases, you might think that Raiden would be a better Hyper Bloom trigger than Kuki. This is one of the teams where that is definitely not the case because Raiden cannot heal Alhaitham back up. We wouldn't be able to keep the permanent proc from Marshmallow Hunter, meaning that his damage would go down. We wouldn't be able to necessarily use Furina in that well of a manner because of the no HP fluctuation on Alhaitham. The reason that this team works is because each one of these characters is in this team fulfilling a very amazing role, and it all synergizes very, very well together. Now, for this next team, we're going to look more at like a pure Hyper Bloom team. And for that, we are going to use Alhaitham again, Nahida, Xingqiu, and Kuki. This would be one where you could probably take Raiden and put Raiden in there instead of Kuki. However, I do like having the extra healing that Kuki gives, even though Xingqiu kind of gives a little bit of healing. In my opinion, I just really like running healers, so I'm going to run... So I would prefer to have Kuki Shinobu instead of Raiden. Alhaitham is also... A lot of Alhaitham's damage is also through his skill, so Raiden using her skill to buff burst damage isn't going to be like super helpful, Kuki's going to be a really good option here. Now we are going to change out her artifacts, and we're going to give her a full EM set, as much EM as I can possibly get onto Kuki Shinobu, because I don't necessarily care about getting the Deep Wood Shred because Nahida has Deep Woods. I want as much EM to get as much Hyper Bloom damage out of Kuki Shinobu as I can. So we're going to give her my two-piece that goes on my Coco and or Yao Yao, so that way she can trigger Hyper Blooms and get a ton of damage through the Hyper Blooms. And in this particular team, whenever she is using Hyper Bloom, it is going to be hitting like 36k, like 30 to 36k, depending on whose buffs are up, depending if Nahida's burst is up, all of that fun stuff. So what we're doing is we are using Nahida to get the Deep Wood Shred and to share EM to all of our other team members. We are using Kuki to cause the Hyper Bloom triggers. We are using Xingqiu's burst with Alhaitham's normal attack, skill, and burst to create blooms, so that way Kuki's pulse is going to go out. It's going to trigger all these Hyper Blooms and do a ton of damage through mainly Hyper Bloom. Like, this is all very much Dendro damage focused. That other team, we were getting some Hydro damage, some Geo damage, and some Dendro damage. This is 100% all Dendro damage. This is what takes it from being a quick bloom to a Hyper Bloom team, is that Farina does much slower Hydro application, whereas Xingqiu does a ton of Hydro application. So we're having more blooms being made through Xingqiu. So we're having more Hyper Bloom damage versus more Alhaitham damage through like a spread reaction. We're going to get less spread reactions in this team because of an introduction of more Hydro. And Alhaitham is not trying to get a ton of spread reactions. Alhaitham is trying to cause as many blooms to form as he can, so that way Kuki can trigger those Hyper Blooms. Now, for this third team, this is going to be much more of a quicken aggravate team. Right, we're not going to be trying to make blooms. We're not going to be doing Hyper Blooms. This is going to be just Alhaitham. In this case, Miko is going to be getting a ton of damage. So what role does Kuki Shinobu fill? She is going to be a healer and a buffer mainly. Now, I am going to give her a really kind of crazy build. I'm going to actually give her Ki, and I'm going to give her 4-piece Tenacity. Tenacity is going to increase attack of all of our party, as well as give HP for more healing. But Ki is going to take some of that nearly 55,000 HP and convert some of it to EM for Alhaitham and for Miko, meaning that their damage is going to go up because of the increased EM from the pure aggravate and spread reactions. And then, of course, she's going to raise the attack of our entire party whenever her tenacity hits, and her skill is going to be able to permanently proc that because the buff lasts for 3 seconds, and her skill pulls out every 1.5 seconds. So it's going to permanently have that attack buff going to Alhaitham and Miko. Now, like I said, this is a pure aggravate team. We're not trying to create blooms. We're not introducing Hydro anywhere. This is a ton of team damage. Alhaitham in this team is actually hitting much higher than what he was in the other teams. Miko is also doing a fair good amount of damage. It is mainly coming down to Miko doing a ton of off-field damage, Alhaitham being our on-field, and then Nahida being Nahida, and Kuki doing what Kuki does. And even if Miko's turrets do not attack the correct enemy, Kuki's skill on Alhaitham will still put Quicken on the enemy, so that way Alhaitham can get spread damage. And this one was really fun. You have a ton of team damage going on, and you do get a mixture, a good mixture of Electro and Dendro damage. So if you're fighting something that has a higher Dendro resistance or a higher Electro resistance, the other one can compensate. Whereas in the Hyper Bloom team, the pure Hyper Bloom team with Xingqiu, it's all Dendro damage. And then in the first one, it's partially Geo, it's partially Geo, partially Dendro, partially Hydro, and those threes kind of mix together to form a lot of damage going on. It's similar to this one because it's a lot of Electro and a lot of Dendro. Now, if I didn't have Ki on Kuki, I don't think that this team would work as well. It works particularly well, I think, because I can convert some of her HP into EM for the team and get Alhaitham up to like 577 EM when he starts around like 160. In this particular team, also, I would take Marshmallow Hunter off of Alhaitham and probably put something like 4-piece Gilded on him, or like 2-piece Gilded, 2-piece Deepwood, something like that. I would not be using Marshmallow Hunter on him, but I didn't want to like swap too many sets around, so I left Marshmallow Hunter on him. And of course, in this team, Kuki is actually able to heal a fair bit. If she gets below 50% HP, she does get a healing bonus, and you can see she's healing like 5,000 per pulse, and then once she gets above 50,000 HP, and then once she gets above 50 HP, then she's able to heal like 4,400. So it's still a fair good amount, like enough to keep any team healthy, especially whenever you're really only going to have to keep Alhaitham healthy in this team. You can use Miko's turrets to kind of dodge enemies, and Nahida's not going to be on the field long, Kuki's not going to be on the field long. So you can really only have to just keep Alhaitham healthy in this team. Everything else is off-field damage. So that's plenty of healing to be able to sustain this team. Now that is going to be it for this video. I didn't talk about a Chevy overloaded team in this. You most definitely could do a Chevy overloaded team, maybe like Arlecchino, Kuki Shinobu, Chevy, Benny. You could possibly do something like that. That could definitely have enough Electro with Arlecchino to cause the overloaded reactions, with Kuki being the sole Electro user, and that would buff. That would be 3 healers though, so I would maybe actually build Kuki Shinobu over to a damage in that instance, maybe like an HP Electro Goblet and then crit rate or crit damage with as much crit as you can get, so that way Kuki could contribute to the team damage. But I would still maybe do it with 4-piece tenacity to get the attack buff. That would be another interesting one to try and do. It'd be like Arlecchino and Kuki. Maybe Arlecchino, Kuki, Beto, Chevy. And you could have Kuki on full support. She's not going to provide enough energy to Beta. That's another video. I'll have to try that at some point and kind of see how that works. That's it for this video. Kuki has green hair. I have green hair, and I'll see you in the next one.